We're in the home of Jim and Terry Young here in Muleshoe, and this is being brought to you through the courtesy of the Muleshoe Chamber of Commerce and Agriculture and Randall CPA firm, honoring pioneer families who still live right here in Muleshoe today. And it's the 100th anniversary of Muleshoe. And first we're going to talk with Jim Young and his sister later, Sue Young Rodgers, who both were reared right here south of town. And Jim, what was your father's name?
W.R. Young, Winfred Riley Young.
And where was he born and when?
He was born in 1902 in Hunt County, Texas.
And where is Hunt County? Do you know? Sue, do you know?
Close to Commerce.
In East Texas then.
East Texas.
And so what year did he come for the first time to Bailey County?
The first time was in 1922. And he came out to look the country over and the land and stuff, and at that time he put a $500 payment down on a piece of land. And
where was this land?
It's southwest of Muleshoe. They're the Longview community.
And you still have that land today?
Yes, we do.
And so about how many miles from Muleshoe is that land located?
It's 15 miles.
15 miles southwest of Muleshoe.
Right, yes.
And so he came out here from where?
Well, he came from Chillicothe. He was a cotton buyer.
He wasn't a cotton buyer yet, was he?
Well, I think he was.
I think he had been trained to be a cotton buyer when he came out here. I believe he had.
Okay, he already had gone to, where did he go to be trained?
Texas A&M.
Texas A&M?
Yes.
And so he really traveled all around West Texas, I bet.
That's correct.
And so what did a cotton buyer really do, Jim?
Well, I'm assuming they went to the gins and looked up the quality of the cotton and such as that, and priced it and bought the cotton and probably sent it to a mill to go ahead and make clothing and stuff out of.
Now, he came here to Bailey County from Chillicothe, but when had he gone to Chillicothe?
Well,
he was 2 years old, wasn't he?
Okay, yeah.
He was 2 years old. Okay. So in really 1904, he went with his parents to Chillicothe. Now, who were his parents?
His parents were John Robert Young and Molly Young.
And we have a picture of them, and this one is made later on. And the two babies there, Sue, are who?
They're Agnes Young and Wendell Young.
Now, Wendell Young also lived in Muleshoe.
Yes, he did.
And what was he nicknamed?
Uncle Biggin.
But what did people in the community?
They called him Wendy.
Wendy Young, and he worked many years where?
The city of water, the Muleshoe Water Department.
And so this is your grandparents with the two oldest children.
That's right, it is.
And how many children did they have?
They had 8.
And your father was where in that number?
He was the third one.
He was the third one in this family. And so I thought something I wanted to show. Wendy and your daddy had a sister. Agnes. And I think that what she has on here is so interesting.
It is. It's charming, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. That is the perfect word. It is charming. And her name was Agnes.
Agnes.
Now, did she live here ever?
She lived in Chillicothe. No, she never lived here.
Okay. So the land there in Chillicothe, is it still in your family?
Yes, it is.
It's still in your family. After how many years?
Well, they came.
Over 100.
Yes, over 100. Because they came. He was born in 1902, and they came in 1904. So yes, it's been. Yeah.
Isn't that something? Now, Jim, he didn't stay when he bought this land. in Bailey County.
That's correct. I think he went back on the road as a cotton buyer, and the word was that he told us that when he decided to come back to Bailey County, that he couldn't find the piece of land that he had put the $500 down on, and he had to go find who the realtor was. And he had to take him back out there and show him, well, this is it, Jim, or WR, right here it is. But
well, it had never been broken out at that time.
No. It was all grassland, and the only road, my understanding is that you could get out was like if you wanted to circle back to Sudan.
It wasn't a Sudan Muleshoe highway.
I don't think so. No.
Or Muleshoe, Needmore, or Circle Back. Nothing. There was nothing south of Muleshoe.
No 214 road.
No 214.
And our little wagon train.
Nothing.
And so now he had made the money to buy this land by doing what?
Pulling cotton, I think, working for his dad, and
Back in Chillicothe. That was
the down payment on the land, $500.
And so now he had gone to school where?
I think Big Valley in Hardman County, which is Chillicothe.
Okay.
Medicine Mound, that's all one kind of community.
And maybe we should mention right now, I believe your brother, John Young, who also lives in Muleshoe, isn't with us today because what's he doing?
He's in Chillicothe erecting a barn today. In fact, he called just before you got here and said he couldn't make it. They're pouring concrete.
Pouring concrete at the barn in Chillicothe. Well, I think your father and mother both would be happy to know that you all are still working hard on the land that they bought so many years ago.
It's very special, isn't it?
Yes, and your grandparents bought that in Chillicothe. Now, tell me about how did your mother and father meet?
Well, Mother was a teacher at County Line, which is right outside of Shallowater. And there was a cotton gin there, and that was one of the places he came to buy cotton. And so he met her there.
And so if she was a school teacher, had she gone to college?
Yes, she had. Back then, you didn't have to have a 4-year degree. You got a teaching certificate, and she had a teaching certificate. And so she was teaching in County Line.
Now, had she gone to school where?
Well, she'd gone to school at Commerce, Texas, and then she had, when her parents moved to the Plains or out in this area, she attended Tech, and she was one in their first student body class.
Is that right? Now, what year was that?
I think it's 1925.
1925. So she went to what became East Texas, and I think it's now East Texas A&M.
It is.
And then the first class at Texas Tech. And she was a young lady who was unmarried at that time.
That's right, she was.
And I know those days as a school teacher for a young lady, I mean, it was very strict.
Well, she lived at home with her parents.
Oh, she did?
She did, and drove to Commerce.
I see.
Yeah, she did. There was no such thing as living by yourself.
And now, Jim, you told me a story about a farmer or a resident of Muleshoe who used to live here so many years ago, who was one of your mother's students there at County Line.
It was A.R. McGuire. That would be Janelle McGuire. Yeah, Turner's. That would be the daughter. And I guess Daddy kind of showed up and was courting my mother there at the school, and the boys didn't like that, and they would put mud up his tailpipe, or they'd smear mud on his windshield because they didn't like him messing with their teacher, and AR reminded me of that for a long time. That
you can't imagine Mr. McGuire putting mud on anything.
Well, AR was he was kind of a prankster, but anyway, they wanted to run him off, you know.
Now, tell me about your mother's parents. Jim, hold up that other.
Well, they were
right here. No, this
They
one.
were originally from East Texas, around the Paris area. I think mother was born in Blossom, Texas, which is just a little bitty place.
Out of Paris.
And in East Texas, and they moved here in 1925, and he farmed
Now here being Lubbock County.
in shallow water in Lubbock County, and so they moved there and farmed, and they eventually moved into Muleshoe, and then of course have been gone a long time, but they were farmers.
And their names were what?
John Robert and Mary B. Mary B.
And their last name?
Murrill, M-U-R-R-E-L-L.
And how many children were in their family?
Three. They had three daughters.
Three daughters. And so they did live in Muleshoe, though?
No, they
No,
didn't
they
live.
didn't.
They lived right outside of shallow water on a farm, and then in their later years they moved into Lubbock.
County line.
County line.
The area, yeah, county line.
Okay. And now your parents married when?
On April the 30th, 1930.
And this was a picture
Right
that
after
was
they married.
made right after they were married. And now, did she come to the farm in south of town?
She finished out her school year, and then she came when school was out, which I guess was the end of May or 1st of June. And she taught at Longview after she came here. She taught at Longview for a good number of years.
Now, your father really did help establish that Longview School, Jim.
He did. He donated the land, and as long as it was a school, that it would it would be a school. And when they consolidated with Muleshoe, I guess, and then it went back to my dad's.
I was in the 4th grade.
In the 4th grade. So you started to school out
At Longview, and we went to church out at Longview.
Longview Baptist Church. I bet.
Well, at that time it was in that school building. Later on, Longview Baptist moved. I don't know, away. As soon when the school dissolved or consolidated, the church, I think, kind of died away, and then when they reestablished it, they were in a different place.
Now, Jim, the Longview School was there on the property of your parents?
That is correct.
I guess your father gave that land then.
Well, he gave the land to him as long as it was a school. And then it would revert back to him if they, ever closed the school down or.
And is the cement still out there where the school was?
The entire foundation is still there. There's just no brick or anything, but you can actually, follow around the rooms a little bit and know where it was at.
And it's on your land out there.
It's on the original Young home place, yes.
And so the brick we see in this picture made in the school year 1934-35 at Longview School is the brick that is found where today?
At the Masonic Lodge.
And that Masonic Lodge is here in Muleshoe, across the street at the corner, or across the street from the Butler County Courthouse Square at the corner of West 2nd and West Avenue C. And so let's talk about some of the people we see in this picture made a couple of years ago. Your mother is there on the far right.
That is correct.
And she was a teacher there.
That's correct.
And beside her is a gentleman with a tie and looks like a vest on, or maybe a sweater vest, and he was a Mr. Poole.
He's Harvey Poole. That would be I'm pretty sure about this. That would be a brother to Myron Poole Sr. and Lee Poole. Yeah,
my brother.
He would be a. The Pooles lived about 3 miles back east of Longview School.
I see. So right over his right shoulder is a Poole girl, and she is right on the end, on the far end, a pretty girl. She looks like Rhonda Johnson.
Well, I think that is, I think that is Betty Jo Johnson.
And that would be Rhonda's mother.
Right.
And wasn't she pretty then?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Betty was
She
also.
was always really one of the class of the whole Muleshoe deal. Betty was a very attractive lady.
And that was Miss Randy Johnson, of course, later on. Now, we come down to the very bottom row, sitting down on her knees, and the little girl on the far right is who?
Bertie Seals.
And that is, of course, Pat Young's mother, and that is the late Bertie Purcell.
Right.
And then on down, the little boy on that same row, next to the little boy who is holding the sign, Longview 1934-35, who is this little boy?
Jesse Ray Carter.
And that's Peggy Berman's father.
Correct.
And then up here on the second row, on the far left, next to the end, is who?
That would be who we would know as Myron Poole Jr., or the third. But that's who everybody called him, Junior Poole.
That would be a brother to Betty Poole Johnson that we showed a moment ago. And Junior Poole would be the father of who? Maryland Riley.
Marilyn Riley, yeah.
And Marshall Poole. And then right above that, on that third row from the bottom, and looks like to me she's got a white dress on with sort of a sailor collar, do you think?
I do. It is. It's a sailor.
And that's another Poole, and that was Betty's sister, and her daughter was Karen Jones.
But I don't remember what her
first name was.
Yeah, what
and also she had two sons.
Yeah, she did.
And now on the back row up here is Myrtle Stevenson Puckett.
Correct.
And that's everybody's mother, John H., D.W., Joyce, Scott, Mary Janice Brantley. Did I get them all? That's their mother. And you can tell that's the way Myrtle Puckett looked always. Yes. And she's on the back row at the very top, and she's the fifth girl or the fifth person from the far right. Myrtle Stevenson Puckett. And the boy right to her right is Don Moore, and that's Wiltsie's
brother.
Older brother. And Donna Black's father. Right. Now, there's many others in there that I'm sure others are picking out, but those are the ones that I can pick out. I did pretty good.
There is, as far as I know, we had several copies of this made. I think there's a copy at the Civic Center. The
Muleshoe Heritage Foundation of the Longview School. So the church and the school met in the same building.
That's right.
At first,
until Longview consolidated with Muleshoe.
Right. And so you found there in that church school building the dictionary.
Yes, what I did is when they completely got all of the books and it tore the building down and everything, that we had a cellar at our house that we just stored stuff in, and a lot of that stuff they stored in that cellar. And for years and years and years, nobody wanted to go down that cellar because there was a water dog and it was all this and all that. And finally, after I got a little older, I went down in there and found some stuff. And one thing that I found was the original dictionary for the Longview Church.
And school.
And school. Yeah. And I found another book that I knew that this was my mother's handwriting, and it was the Longview School, and I knew Sue would verify that was authentic, but so I got that and gave that to Sue.
Oh, how nice, Sue.
Great.
That is wonderful.
Oh, it is Mother's handwriting. How special, 1934. It is her handwriting.
And what does it say?
Longview School, 1934, and the name of the book is Outdoor Adventure.
That's
special.
a very
Thank you, Jim.
wonderful treat.
Oh, yeah.
And so now this church school was on that original labor that your dad purchased in 1922. And I understand a labor is, you told us, 160 acres. And now, is that everywhere?
No. Labor is 177 acres.
Oh, 177.
And 4 times that is 703 approximately. So down south of town, if you had a section of land, it would be approximately 700 acres. North of Muleshoe, it'd be 640. Now, I don't know
why.
I don't know why. Well, it's called a quarter here and labor down south.
North, they measure in a quarter, and labor in the south part.
Is labor's, which is 177 acres and 160 up north of town. I don't know why that, but it's been that. I grew up with that. That's the way it is.
It's interesting, isn't it? How long, Sue, did your mother teach?
Well, she started in 1930, in the fall of 1930, and I think she taught through 1935.
So the Depression years.
The Depression years, and she was the breadwinner, one of them, and they sold eggs and butter and that sort of thing to make ends meet during those times.
And do you think they even brought the eggs and the butter into town?
Well, they did in later years. At the very beginning, probably. I mean, I don't really know, but I just know that they did sell eggs and butter and that sort of thing to supplement.
And now, what about irrigation? Was there irrigation at any point?
There wasn't. Jim knows more about that than I do. Daddy was instrumental in one of the first wells south of Muleshoe. Jim, why don't you come in?
I don't remember exactly, but I think it was like Arthur Schaefer and Daddy and maybe W.R. Carter.
And the farm
Wilson, Nudie Moore. I'd probably leave out
farm that they were all kind of instrumental in helping that first well be drilled.
That would have been on the Lloyd Davenport farm.
I think so.
And then later on, John was telling me, and I didn't know this, that Daddy drilled wells on the west side of our home place where we built, and there was no water, very little water, and so he had those wells ever so many yards or feet apart, and they only had little bit of water coming out, and people teased him because there was such a little bit of water coming out. So he did have some irrigation wells on the back of that were his own.
Now, when he came here, did we tell how much land he bought?
I think it said a labor. Isn't that right?
Land is what he bought.
177.
And so did he add to that?
Yes, he did.
He added to that. And so they were active in the community life and the church life.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And they went to the Longview Baptist Church.
They did. They did.
And do you remember anything about that church?
Well, I do. It was in the schoolhouse, in this little red schoolhouse, and they had an auditorium, and we used to have pie sales, and and they had preachers that kind of, what would they be called? They would not cut.
A circuit?
Kind of a circuit sort of thing. We might not ever have a preacher that was there all the time, but they had revivals, and you'd go Sunday morning and you'd go Monday morning and Monday after, for a week, and I remember those days. And but when I became a Christian, it was there at a revival, and I was baptized in Muleshoe at the Muleshoe First Baptist Church.
Oh, really? They brought you into town? Not to a creek. You couldn't find a creek around
There
here.
wasn't enough water down south of town.
That's right. First Baptist Church.
Now, where was the church when you were baptized in Muleshoe?
I think it was at the same place where it is now, but it faced now it faces the south, and I think it faced the north.
Yes.
And it was white. The best I remember, it was white. Looked like it was Baptist. It was big. It was white, I think.
Now, I've been told that the first one was a dugout at that location.
But I didn't. That wasn't it.
That wasn't the one you were.
No.
They had a baptistry.
They had a baptistry, and they brought us from Longview, and we were baptized on a Sunday afternoon.
And do you remember anybody else who was baptized at
My
the
mother.
Your mother
Yes.
was.
When she married my dad, she was a Methodist. And the Baptists say if you're a Methodist and haven't been immersed, you have to be rebaptized, And so she was baptized into the Baptist faith with me.
I see. And anybody else?
I don't remember anybody else. There were others. They brought a group, but I just remember Mother.
And who were your friends in that community? Other young people?
Schaefer's, Sonny Schaefer and Barbara D. Schaefer Marlowe, and the Moores, Sissy and Wilsie and Don. They're older than I am, but I was telling Jim when I was little and we were in school in Longview, I don't know whether we turned out I don't know why we weren't in school, but I would get to go over and spend the night with Sissy. And then they would get up in the morning, and Wilsie drove the bus and brought people into Muleshoe to go to high school, I guess. And it was just
let Wilsie drive the
Wilsie was driving. And I remember Sissy was, it was just the highlight of my life to get to do that. And we'd get on one morning, I remember particularly it was just snow deep, and he's trying to warm up that bus, and Sissy has blankets and everything to keep us warm, and she also has hot chocolate. And then I would get to follow her around all day at high school, so it was fun.
Yeah, and she being older, you idolized
Oh,
her.
I did. I love Sissy.
And Sissy Moore was the older sister of Wilsie.
No, younger.
Oh, young.
She may be younger. She may be older. I don't know. It's Don and Sissy and Wilsie. I don't know. I don't know who's older, Wilsie or Sissy.
I thought that Wilsie might be the baby. I thought.
Well, he acts like it.
Well, no, I didn't say. I think that I may be wrong on that.
But that was a real treat for me. I loved it.
I know it was. Now, she spoke about snow.
Yeah.
Did you have some snows that were a lot deeper than what we experience nowadays, Jim?
We have one right here. I have a picture of it, and it was 1956. And if you were going to school and on a bus route out anywhere in the country, we stayed home probably 2.5 weeks or maybe 3 weeks. And
How deep was it?
well, the snow and spots were probably 10 foot deep. We couldn't get cars out of the garage. You couldn't. I know that at times my mother would get John to saddle up the horse and go to Bean Grocery and pick up some supplies, and they would do that about once a week.
Now, that grocery store was at Needmore. So how far was it to Eddie Bean's grocery store?
About 5 to 6 miles.
And it was right on U.S. Highway, on 214 south of Muleshoe. Right. And at the corner there, one direction you go down to Circle Back and the other one to Baileyboro. It was right there on the corner. Right. The building still stands.
Yes, yes. Yes.
And so I was wondering, Sue, how did they ever get groceries in after they depleted their groceries to the Bean grocery store?
Well, they got saddled that horse back up and went back over there.
Well,
yeah,
I can tell
the
you,
stalker.
I can remember a truck that came to our house, and it had all kinds of things on it that Mother could buy. It was like a traveling grocery store, and I always got to get a peanut patty.
Oh, how interesting.
Yeah, I can remember them. Now, I don't know where that was. Well, it would be probably, what was Eddie Bean's daddy's name?
Well, it's Fred, but Pinto.
Pinto. See, that was when I was little, and so it was during all that time. But I can remember that grocery truck coming up there, and Mother buying things from the grocery truck.
Now, Eddie Bean is the father of Kay Elliott, who lives right next door to that building today. And this is another picture of that 1956 snowstorm that anyone can remember if they lived in this area. And who's in this picture?
That would be John and I.
Okay, now John is on which side?
John would be on the right side, Jim's on the left side.
And that's a fence, so you see how far up the snow came.
Yes, it was very far. And this picture is who?
That's my dad and me standing on a big snowdrift and in front of the garage. And in fact, you can see through the garage. But anyway, it was 8 foot. 6-8 foot, and the thing I remember about it most of is anything is basically besides being out of school, we had candles. That was how we got around, with candles.
You had no electricity?
No electricity.
Now, we did in town because we lived in Muleshoe, but we were city slickers.
Yeah. Well, we candles. We had a lot of candles.
You always had to deal with the water freezing. It was.
Oh, yes.
But anybody that was around in that, they know what we're talking about there as far as that snow.
Now, you were talking about the Schaefers. Now, what's one of the Schaefer boys?
Well, it was Sonny Schaefer.
Sonny.
But it was Barbara.
Okay.
Marlowe.
Sonny, I think, now I hope I have this right. Would his wife been pregnant?
No.
And okay,
That's
well,
Louis Wayne, I think.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
But some Schaefer had to bring their wife to town to have the baby on a tractor in that snow shine.
Remember that.
In 1956.
I don't know who that would be.
Now,
The only Schaefers I know would have been Louis Wayne and
Louis Wayne isn't smart enough to drive a tractor.
Well, I don't know. Louis Wayne's a little bit older than I am, so I don't.
Yes.
It could have been him because at the time these pictures were made, I was in college.
You were in college.
So it could have been Louis Wayne. I don't
Well,
know.
it could. Now, how old would Sonny be?
Well, Sonny was a little. He's older than I am, but he
Okay,
was-
it was.
I think
and
Louis Wayne is 82 years old.
Oh, I don't think Louis Wayne wants you to say that.
Well,
Sonny wouldn't have had a wife, so that
69.
it was probably Louis Wayne because it would not be Sonny.
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, anyway, it's a good story. I know another story about that snowstorm. My dad was quite a smoker. Camels. No tips, And so he has to get to the radio station because, according to the Federal Communications Commission, you sign on the air and you sign off daily, no matter what, come rain or come shine. And so we didn't live that far from the radio station. He got there, but he had no cigarettes.
No.
He ran out. Lee Poole, I don't know how Lee got to town and got cigarettes for him, so he was able to survive the snow.
The thing about it, the pioneers coming out here and snowstorms, sandstorms, no facilities, having to make facilities and all of this was quite a deal. And a lot of hardships, but I will tell you one thing that I've never forgot.
What's that?
My dad told me, he said, if I had it all to do over again, I'd get an education.
Really?
And do you remember him saying that? He said, if I had it all to do over again, I'd get an education.
Well, he did a good job, though, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
And you went to Tech,
I did.
and you graduated from Muleshoe High School.
I
what
did.
year?
54.
54. And then who did you marry?
Richard Rodgers, and he lived in Lubbock.
And so your father and mother had how many children?
They had three.
Three.
John and Jim and I, and then there was 8 grandkids, is that right? And 14 great-grandchildren.
That's a wonderful legacy they left. What year did your mother die?
59. She died in 59.
19.
Daddy died in 1961.
Really close together.
Very close together.
So how old were you when she died?
23 maybe, and then with Daddy it was yeah.
Were you married before?
No, not when Mother died. I was married when Daddy died.
Daddy died. And how old were you when your dad died?
Well, I was, let's see here, I would have been like a sophomore in high school.
You were just going to be a freshman when Mother died.
And so, but you went on to college and to where?
West Texas State.
Did you play football?
I did.
And who did you play football for?
Joe Kerbal.
The big mouth. Yes, sir. Well, it has been a lot of fun reminiscing with both of you. And Sue, thank you for coming all the way from Lubbock.
Thank you for honoring my mother and daddy. That's just great to get to talk about.
You know, I say this again, but some of these people out here and these kids that don't know what they're thinking about doing, they might think about that. Get an education.
Today, it's even more important. You know, it really, really is. And we've been talking with Sue Young Rodgers and her little brother, who's big now, Jim Young, and Jim and Terry Young's home here in Muleshoe, about their parents and the pioneer days that they experienced. Their daddy came here in 1922 and bought land south of town, 15 miles in the Longview community. And the Muleshoe Chamber of Commerce and Agriculture and Randall CPA firm are honoring these pioneer families like the Youngs that still have ties right here in Muleshoe today on the 100th anniversary of our town.